want to thank our sponsor, Flight Club Spirit, which is an aircraft-inspired collaboration between contemporary artist Graphic Aircraft and the internationally award-winning Defiance Distillery. They produce 8 different types of aviation-themed gin and rum, each with a different iconic aircraft pictured on the bottle to suit all different types of avgeek. Make sure you head to their website at defiancedistillery.co.uk to check out all their amazing spirits and products. If you enjoy our videos and podcasts and would like us to continue putting out regular quality content, head over to patreon.com/aircrew interview, where you can donate monthly, and in return you will get rewards ranging from early interview viewings, bonus clips, credited as a producer, and much more. Thank you and enjoy. So how many squadrons were actually left by 2011 in the F3?
Lucas was the last wing.
Yeah.
43 on Treble 1. 56 sort of morphed into 43 Squadron.
Right.
So it downsized. 43 folded. Treble 1 was the last squadron.
Yeah.
So by 2011, I think there was only Treble 1 left, and it folded fairly early in that year. But that was about the time it was supposed to go out. So it was supposed to originally retire in 2010. So it actually made about another 6 months over its original.
Not bad.
Yeah. So
was there a big party
years
as well?
There was a huge party.
Because the GRs had a big party.
Oh, yes.
I never really, 2011, so yeah, I didn't really hear about it, but did you attend?
I did.
Where was it at?
It was at Lucas, in the hangar at Lucas, and in the evening. And great fun was had by all. And
many attend?
My 2 pictures that I took were almost impossible to see. So 2 very, very dark F3s in the corner, and that's it. And I don't remember much about the rest of the evening. So
really?
Great fun. Yeah.
So because what's the highest powered pilot and nav on the F3? Because I interviewed Roy McIntyre. I think he's 4,000, and I think the nav's a bit more than that.
Roy Mac was the highest.
Yeah.
So whatever figure Roy told you was absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
Roy was on my course going through Coningsby on the F2 days and carried on flying, and I didn't. So Roy made nearly 5,000 hours, and I didn't. Not that I'm bitter. I ended up writing letters and things.
But yeah,
the other guy was Wiki, who was the navigator, and he actually got more hours than Roy. And then Wiki was also on my course, and he then went on to do the QI course and various other things, and became the lead nav for hours and just top 5,000, I think. So both very experienced and very capable.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because obviously you run the group.
Colin Wills, I should say.
Colin Wills.
Wills.
Yeah, you run the former Tornado F3 fly group, and there's some good banter in there. Why did you think of starting that up? Was it just so you could get in touch with old mates, or what was? Yeah,
I'd sort of. It was a bit odd, but I'd taken control of the former Phantom Flyers group when the previous chap sort of said he wasn't interested in doing it anymore. And I thought, well, you need one for the Tornado as well. So I just opened up the 2 groups, and I'm very gentle on it, very very easy-handed on the admin type. But it's the whole point of those 2 groups are so that flyers can talk. Whereas a lot of the other groups on the internet, it's enthusiasts and pictures of aeroplanes doing this and the other. The whole point about those 2 groups is that people who flew the jets can chat. We let other people in, not sort of, it's not exclusive, but try to keep it away from the routine of just posting pictures off the internet and things like that.
Yeah,
and more the stories of what you did on the jet, or sadly nowadays increasingly it's people have passed away and things like that, which is very sad.
Yeah.
But that kind of thing, to be able to, for the flyers to be able to have a little forum there.
Yeah, I think it's a great. And there was recently I saw, was it the tornadofr3.info? It was a new website that came up.
Right.
We're not seeing it. I think it was a previous one. It's been, and then someone started it up again.
Excellent.
All about the Tornado 3. That was pretty cool. So I've been spent about half an hour on that, looking through all the pictures and everything. But So what do you think about social media in general? Are you a fan? What's your take on it?
I suppose I have to, because I'm an author. You know, and you've got to be hooked up on the internet nowadays. If ever you go to the book fairs and what have you, they say you've got to be on social media, and it's true. Increasingly marketing books, you've got to be out there. You've got to interact with people that buy books. You've got to say what you do and make sure that they know that the books are available.
Yeah.
So you've got to be on social media. But I like it.
You enjoy that process, yeah.
I do,
yeah.
I do. And I enjoy interacting with people. Writing books is really solitary.
Oh, yeah, it's typing away.
Tap away, and I'm a two-finger typist.
Yeah.
And tap away for hours, and it takes a year to produce a book and edit it and all the rest of it. And it can be quite mind-blowing and soul-destroying at times. But the nice thing is when it's finally out there and people start to say, oh, I liked that.
Yeah,
or equally, it's not as much fun, but when people say, I didn't like that because...
Yeah, which is very rare, though.
You've got to look at it and find out why.
Yeah.
And you can't please everybody all the time. But as part of that process, you've got to be active on social media. Otherwise, people just don't know your book's there.
You're a popular figure on, especially in the aviation circle. And
I try.
Yeah, I think you chip in. I think you're quite active. People ask you questions, and you're more than happy to answer, which I think is great. And I think, your books, you've got some hardcore fans out there, which is great.
Well, I must admit, my reason for starting to write books in the first place was to try and just explain what it was like to fly an aeroplane. That's always been what I've wanted to do.
Because it's a very exclusive club, so
it is.
So, yeah,
and I was very lucky.
Like me,
I got to fly fast jet aeroplanes in the Air Force. Fantastic.
Not jealous at all.
But you trying to describe that can be quite hard, which is why I've gone for a mix of factual and fiction, because you've got a little bit more latitude on the fiction. Factually, you've got to be absolutely correct. Fiction, you can...
Yeah. And do you like going more into the technical side, or do you like, I guess, like approaching like the general reader so you can explain it a bit better? Like, what's your style of writing?
Sort of slightly more towards the technical side, because I guess it would be, wouldn't it? Because that was, being an aviator is quite a technical thing. And equally, the novels are more technical than your average reader would normally expect. But that's what I do. It's a bit like Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy is always technical. He always goes that extra bit of detail. And for me, that's important. Credibility is important.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah. So if people don't like that, then don't read my books. Don't read it,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I don't apologise for that, because...
No, you shouldn't, It's your style. If you like it, and the same, buy the book, read the book.
And I always put it in the blurb, taking it to a level of detail not seen in other fiction.
So you're not like...
So that I'm not trying to...
Pulling the wool over someone's eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't want a technical book, then don't read my stuff. And it's a bit more geeky than the average.
You get the boys' books, which are great, but like they're more stories and they're like a bit less technical.
I'll give you an example though. Andy McNabb. His first book was really detailed about the SAS and how they did stuff during the Gulf War and what have you. But if you look at his work over the years, obviously it's become more jelly mould, and that's not a criticism. That's what the publishers want. They want something a bit more generic that appeals to the broader audience. So he's gone away from the detail of the early books to a more generic product. That's great, but I'm not sure I will ever do that. I do what I do. I've relaxed a bit. It's not as technical as it was at the start, but I still want to push out something that's a bit more detailed. So
yeah, brilliant. So what are we having, Dave?
Well, you talked about what my tipple was, and red wine, and Chianti is one of the favourites. So I thought we'd uncork a bottle of Chianti Classico.
This is probably the poshest wine I've ever had. So I'm normally Aldi $3.99.
And I've just mutilated that, but there you go.
Thanks very much, Dave. Right,
yeah,
Dave.
so a little glass of Chianti.
Yeah, thank you very much.
The reason this is so topical is that I did 4 months down at the Balkans Combined Air Operations Centre at Vicenza.
Oh, wow.
And I was the senior ops officer down there, responsible for the day-to-day running of the air tasking order. And as you can imagine, a few glasses of Italian red in the evenings when I had my time off was almost mandatory. So I had a little flat in the middle of Vicenza, and I lived there for 4 months. And
you've been all over.
Yeah, did my detached duty in a very pleasant place. So
very nice. Yeah. Well, that's my first try one of these, so let's go for it.
That's all right, isn't it?
That is nice.
That
is nice.
Yeah.
Beats Aldi. That's for sure. But you mentioned travelling there, and then you've been China recently, haven't you?
I have.
What have you been up to there?
Just a bucket list job. I mean, I looked at places I'd wanted to go, and going to a Formula One Grand Prix race was one of them, which I did last year. Flying in a Spitfire was one of them, which I did last year. So I looked at places that I really wanted to visit, and the Great Wall of China was kind of high up the list. So
was it as good as everyone says? I've heard mixed reviews. People,
awesome.
Was it really good?
I just lost track of the times I said, wow. Yeah. Went to see the Terracotta Warriors, and wow. Went to see some pandas, which I didn't expect to enjoy, and said, wow, that's good. And just an amazing country with very nice people, and it's really nice to be able to see people close up, because I think the reality is that when you get to know people, we're all the same. And it's funny being an ex-military person, but we kind of build barriers. And actually, when
which
you
is
talk
really
to
strange,
people,
you just need another human. Because I've been to Malaysia, and then you get this kind of stereotype of people, and you meet them, you're just like, just another bloke, another girl, whatever, and it's great.
And it's all, in the end, it's all sort of, dare I say, propaganda. It's
Could
whatever
be.
the media pushes out. It's whatever perceptions are. And actually, when you get down to it, we're all people.
But then you weren't allowed social media or anything over there, were you?
Indeed. Well, there was that. There was that.
Yeah.
Facebook was banned.
It's probably,
Twitter was
probably
banned.
good, actually, for just a couple of weeks break or whatever. Because like sometimes I want a break from it, but unfortunately, like I can't. And sometimes I guess you can't as well, because you need to push your books and stuff.
Indeed.
Indeed.
But when you try to log on, the little wheel just keeps whirling.
So it doesn't say you can't go out, just a little...
Just carries on, and you get something that was posted 5 days ago. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
And then you mentioned the Spitfire trip there. What was that like? Because that was
just
last year?
awesome. Yeah, last year. Yeah. It was a very emotional experience, not least of which flying a Spitfire, because, that is every aviator's dream, flying a Spitfire. And I did actually get a chance to operate the controls and fly it for 5 minutes. I flew with a very good mate of mine called Parky, who used to be on the Battle of Britain Memorial flight as a Spitfire pilot, and is now flying commercially down at Headcorn with the company down there. And we were both ex-92 Squadron, so we both got to fly together.
With Cobras.
And with 2 Cobras together, which was absolutely brilliant. Wore the 92 Squadron flying suit, had the old op patch on the day that we flew.
You also had my T-shirt on.
I had your T-shirt on, and we got the selfie next to the Spitfire.
Yeah, that was really great. But do you get to many museums or anything like that? Like,
I do try.
Yeah,
I do try. Yeah, if I'm going to a city and they've got a museum, I try to pop in.
Yeah,
because you get such a different flavour, don't you? Particularly if you're overseas.
Yeah,
I'd love to go some of the former Soviet Union type places.
Yeah,
Moscow and places like that, to see the airplanes, because some of these cities have fantastic museums. I did go to Athens. They had a great museum there of, and I did the RAF Gatow. The German Air Force now have a museum at Gatow. Absolutely fabulous. It's a Cold War warriors desire. So many both Western types and former East Europe, former Soviet types, but brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
So on that, like, what's your favourite like Eastern Bloc type aircraft? Do you have one?
Not really. I suppose you kind of look at the aeroplanes that you flew against. So in my era, that would have been the MiG-21, the MiG-23.
Yeah.
MiG-25 wasn't so much an issue in that you either got it or you didn't, depending on where it was. If it was way, way, way up there, it'd have been a struggle to get up high enough to shoot it. If it was down a little bit lower, we'd have got it. So, but the other ones were the ones that you kind of trained against. The fighter bombers that were coming through.
I think you said the floggers weren't too great.
No,
I remember you once telling me that when we were walking past them.
We didn't know that at the time. We kind of built it as 6 foot tall, and it wasn't. It was about 3 foot tall.
The Red Eagles book,
yeah. And of course, having worked at Nellis and spoken to some of the people that used to fly the airplanes, on constant peg, and after it was declassified, they were able to talk about it. And one of the gentlemen that I worked for was a former commander of the squadron that flew the MiGs.
Yeah.
So I chatted to him, and many times, and he said that the MiG-23, every time you flew it, tried to kill you. He said that the aeroplane was just a nightmare. That it had a stick shaker system that, when it got to high units and low speed, it would virtually pull your hand off. So he was very derogatory about that as an airplane.
It couldn't move the wings back in a turn, couldn't it? Oh, is that correct?
It could. You had to be straight and level to move the wings, as I understand it.
Yeah.
But if you had tanks on, you certainly couldn't because they were fixed pylons.
Right.
So if you put the tanks on, you were stuck with whatever wing position you were in. So if they were coming through with wings forward that had been going slower, get the tanks. Presumably they'd have had to ditch them and then press on. But what the MiG-23 did very well, like the Tornado, was go very quickly in a straight line. Mm-hmm. And apparently 900 knots was no problem in a flogger. So it went quick, but it didn't turn much. Mm-hmm. The MiG-21, though, he was very complimentary about. Mm-hmm. He liked it. He thought it was a great aeroplane to fly. Mm-hmm. He did tell a wonderful story, though, because he talked about... They were, because this was all covert at the time, and they were having trouble keeping these airplanes flying. So they went out to buy some new brakes, and their fleet had been a bit depleted. Mm-hmm. So they went to their suppliers and said, "Can we have another 100 sets of those, please?" And they gave them the brakes from the MiG-21 that had been used.
Wow!
So their supplier said, "Yes, no problem, sir. We will produce you 100 sets more of these. No problem at all." So they did. They produced 100 sets of used brake shoes, which weren't a lot of use to anybody.
Yeah. But I remember, you might know him. He's a former F-111 guy. He went to the fighter weapons school and he flew the F-111s, and he went up against the MiG-23s, and he said it was an awful aircraft.
Yeah.
He said even in acceleration, he said the F-111 outperformed it, which I was surprised about.
That's saying something, because the F-111 wasn't the best.
No.
Either turning. It could accelerate very quickly.
Yeah. It was pretty cool.
I think that's a swing wing thing.
Yeah. Same with the Tomcat, obviously. It's my second favourite aircraft, but you never actually got to go up against one, did you?
A Tomcat, no. No, I would love to have tried it.
I think it's a pretty rare thing. I know Keeves did.
Good friend of mine did, and he flew it. Yeah, he did an exchange at Oceana, and they're very complimentary about its capability and its radar and all the rest of it. It sounded like a great aeroplane. I think most of us, if we're honest, would have preferred to get an F-14 back in the 80s than a Tornado, and it would arguably have done a better job than the Tornado did, certainly in the early days. Maybe not later on, but that's 10 years after. So, wonderful airplane, particularly the D.
Yeah, the D model, yeah. But have you ever seen one fly at an air show or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, lots of times. In fact, we had a lovely incident where back at the Fairford Air Show back in 92, I think it was, I took a Tornado in as a static, and we landed and we went wandering around, dressed in the flying suit with the patches on, and went to the Bear, which had landed for the first time in UK, and sort of waved at the Russian aircrew and said, "Any chance of going in?" "Yes, come on in," And they let us in the airplanes. We climbed in the Midas, we climbed in the Bear, and had a look around and saw the whole thing. And having done that, feeling very pleased with ourselves and taking a few pictures in the cockpit, we then went around to the to the F-14, which was parked just alongside the Bear, and my mate, who had actually flown the airplane on exchange and had about 1,000 hours on Tomcats at that time, said, and he had his Tomcat patch on, and he said, "Can we go in and have a look? I want to show my mate the cockpit." And we couldn't get in.
No way.
So the Americans, our closest allies, wouldn't let us in the airplane and have a look, whereas the Russians had let us climb all over the Bear and the Midas.
Were you on static at that air show?
My airplane was it, and funnily enough, it was my airplane, Alpha Charlie. Yeah.
Because I've got that in my office. Yeah.
That was the static airplane. That was the year of the MiG collision. Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And were you on static? So you were chatting to the public as well?
No, we didn't have to do that. They just wanted the airplane park up and leave. So we went around and had a good time.
What were the hangar parties like? I've heard they're quite good at air shows.
Yes.
Heard some stories.
Yes, those photographs will probably never emerge.
Yeah, but did you ever fancy going on? Because you actually flew on the Tornado Aeros once, didn't you? Wasn't it in Finland?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It was very brief. The Finland was a different episode actually, but I never flew the airshow circuit.
Yeah.
Because I was a flight commander at the time, so it was a bit busy. So I couldn't give the time up to. It's a very time-intensive thing, and has to be done properly. You know, so the guys that did it did it. But that year, in fact, no. When I did the Aeros, the mini Aeros display, we were going to do a tour of the Gulf, and it was really a sales push for the company. You know, demonstrating the airplane. Hopefully, the Arab nations buying it. But we took it around, and Paul Brown, who was the aerobatic display pilot for that year, he'd just finished his season. So I climbed in the back with him, and he gave me a few tips of what to do and how you do it. And we flew 4 displays at the various venues that we were at in the Gulf that year. And great fun. So I got the flavour, but not, never did the Aeros sequence. But what was the other one you mentioned?
The Finland one. You went to...
The Finland, yeah. That was a really special weekend because we were asked to go do a static display at Kauhava, which was up in Finland. And they do a midnight air show to end the season. And we were asked to go out there, and I was flying with the boss, Pete Coker. And we were asked to go out and just put a static aeroplane up so that they could see the tornado. So we did, and we landed, and we got in about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they said, really glad to see you, and you'll be getting airborne at 5 to 12 and close the show. And the boss said, we will? Oh, good. So there was a lot of gulping and, telephone calls back to the UK to say, look, they expect us to close the show today, help. Luckily, I think Cliff Spink might even have been the station commander at that time. And luckily, Pete Coker had just finished doing a short sequence of a 4-ship workup and a little bit of solo type stuff at the end of that for air days. So it wasn't a full aerobatic display, but it was a little sequence of something that worked. And he said to the station commander, look, I've got this sequence. Are you happy that I do it to close the show here at midnight? So the station commander agreed. I think the AOC agreed as well. And we did. We got airborne. But unfortunately, it wasn't. Normally, you flew these things in a clean wing aeroplane with no fuel on board and all the rest of it. This was a full-up tornado with 22 50-litre tanks, the big tanks, to get to Finland, which had been filled because we'd landed thinking we were just going to fly home. So we had to do this little sequence with big tanks. So there was a whole bunch of things that we had to think about, and it was midnight. So we got airborne and did a very gentle display of just, sort of wing overs and things like this. And it was very carefully scripted, and we sat down and wrote out what the sequence was going to be. And it worked very well. And it's actually on video. You can find it out there on the internet.
Yeah, I think it was one of our supporters on Patreon, Miko. I think
yes, indeed.
He pointed out, and I think obviously the fast pass wings backwards, it's pretty impressive. Yeah. I think you said
that's always good, and that's the easiest one to do.
It's
the turning there.
Turning. So what was it like having their big tanks on? Like, could you actually feel it in the jet? Like when you were trying to,
yeah. The jet was so much more sluggish. Yeah, absolutely.
What about the smaller tanks? Could you feel the difference between them? Because
you could, but normally when you were above about 25,000 feet, particularly if you had FEMAT and the TRD on, then it became a bit of a dog. But down low, it wasn't so bad. But anytime you put stuff on the outside of a tornado, it's going to show you its displeasure.
Yeah, because I was talking to Mike Napier, as you know, and we were talking about air-to-air refueling, and we were saying like you used to have to plug in one in either min reheat or something like that. Was it the same on the F3?
The F3 wasn't as bad because we had the bigger engines, particularly in reheat.
Yeah.
So 25,000 feet, we could tank quite happily. The GR1 with all the stuff on couldn't, so it would need the the extra help.
Right.
Anything above that, without a doubt, you were struggling.
Really?
Yeah.
And were you involved in any way with the Typhoon project? Because obviously that's a really capable aircraft at the moment.
Yeah, I was involved in the defensive aids suite. So the defensive things like the radar warning receiver, the jammers, the chaff and flares, and all the other stuff, laser warning receivers. So I was involved in the period between when when the requirement was set and it was turned into specification. So I was the desk officer for that phase. Fascinating stuff. Great aeroplane. If you asked a current Tornado pilot, is it great? I'll come up with all the bad things about it. But I had one last ride before I retired, and it was absolutely amazing. You know, the performance is awesome, the view is awesome, the capability is awesome. With a helmet-mounted sight, it must be magic. Although I wasn't wearing one. I was hugely impressed.
Did you do a performance takeoff on yours?
No, sadly, no. I was on an operational not an operational sortie, but a training sortie from the conversion unit. So we were going to get airborne. We were going to go out to Wales as a 2v2. Two Typhoons got airborne from Coningsby. I was in the two-seater. There was a single-seater along with us. We went out to Wales and we did a training sortie against two Hawks. So we did the pitch in, and I was a passenger in the back. I had nothing to do at all other than watch the show. You know, the guy in the front did it all. A chap called Al Seymour, great guy. One of my students on the Tornado when he was a young baby pilot, and then he ended up as the boss of the the Typhoon conversion unit. Yeah. And I got to fly with him for my last ride, which was absolutely magnificent. Hugely capable pilot, and it was a lovely way to end my Air Force career.
Absolutely. And do you think the Typhoon's the right jet for the RAF at the moment? Yeah,
it is, without a doubt. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
But you and RP did some TV work, didn't you? Was it Scrap? Oh, what was it called? We have to talk about
Scrap
that,
Kings.
Dave. You're not getting away from that.
Yes, indeed. Scrap Kings.
Scrap Kings,
It came out of the blue, and it turns out that Jet Art Aviation up at Selby, they buy old RAF aeroplanes and then they refurbish them and send them out to museums. And Chris Wilson up there is a great guy, and he was moving an aeroplane, an F2, and it was going from, I think, Boscombe Down, and it was going up to the Manchester Fire Service. It was going to be put into service as a sort of a training vehicle. You know, firemen could get onto it and put out fires and learn out how to cope with a fast jet that crashed or whatever. And this program, Scrap Kings, followed the movement of this aeroplane from Chris's yard across to the Manchester Fire Service. But what they wanted was a crew who had flown the aeroplane as a little bit of fill-in, you know, to sort of say, well, when it was really flying, this is what happened. Yeah. So we were co-opted to have a chat, and we were dragged down to a hotel down near where the studios were, and we had a chit-chat with we did about an hour's discussion, and we got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, it was tiny, wasn't it? Yeah. You're looking through, was it some picture books or something? Or something like that?
I always said, if ever I'm interviewed on TV, I'm not going to look at the pictures. And what happened? I'm looking at the pictures, but there you go.
So you're there for an hour and a bit filming. So what else do they want you to film? I'm quite interested in that.
They just talked about the airplane during its time, you know. So it was background archive material. So
they just wanted what was going to work best for TV.
Yeah, but they only used the sort of 90 seconds they needed, and it was clips of the Tornado flying through the valleys in Wales. But more importantly, some of my air-to-air video that I'd taken when I was flying the aeroplane, and yeah, it was just, this is the aeroplane. It was the then and now, and it was just the story of that aeroplane's move to the service.
And you sometimes see it in the media. I don't know if you get it, but like they always like say navs are pilots or something like that. Did that happen in that show or anything like that? Or it was like two pilots or?
No, we didn't get that. We did get, you know, Rick is the pilot, I was the navigator.
That's good, yeah.
This and that, and but there was a bit of that. Mostly the media say two pilots.
Two pilots, yeah.
But I've never been bitter.
No. You're the brains of the outfit anyway.
Exactly, we all know.
We've seen Keep, so.
When we did that first interview, you asked me what I enjoyed, and Scotch was one of them. So we've got a little Scotch here, an Aberfeldy. So
it's very nice.
We ought to uncork this. So it's been great fun chatting.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk to you, as always, yeah. I consider you a mate now. Like I've known you for about 5 years now, I think.
Indeed, yeah.
We've known each other a long time, so it's getting to the point where we can sit and have a whiskey together.
Airplanes never get old.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about aeroplanes.
Slange.